Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is that you're joining me for this video. Thanks once again for clicking on the PenBoyRoy Fountain Pen Review channel. The subject of today's video is the Laban 325 Fountain Pen. Before I get started with this review, please make sure to check out my sponsor, Pen Chalet, over at penchalet.com, and be sure to use coupon code GOODWORDS at checkout for extra savings on all your purchases, with some exclusions applying, of course. Check out the description below for more information and links to the Pen Chalet website. Also, don't forget to check out my podcast. It's called the PenBoyRoy Pentertainment Podcast. If you haven't already, please make sure you do. It's available on all podcasting apps, whichever one you like to use. Just be forewarned, it's not for children. You have been warned. All right, so I have done reviews on other Laban pens in the past. You can check out those reviews if you want in the fountain pen review playlist that I have available. Just be advised though, that was when I kind of was going a little crazy. I had gotten new equipment and I was experimenting with all kinds of different ways of shooting videos and reviews, and I was kind of a little out of my mind. I was all over the place. I didn't really have a format. I do now, as you guys may or may not know, so this is a little bit more formatted and a little less unusual, but I do cover background information on the Laban brand, and I go over dates and whatnot. So if you want that kind of information, check out those reviews. As far as the Laban 325, as far as I can tell, the number 325 seems somewhat random. I talked to a lot of people about it, and they're not sure why 325 is called the 325. There's going to be some numbers on the nib, and that represents the highest mountain in Taiwan, okay? Because it seems that whenever people throw numbers on nibs, the highest numbers and heights of mountains seems to be the way to go. So this pen, despite it being a bingo game on crack, is a very interesting pen, so stick around so that you guys have all the information you need before making an informed decision on whether or not you should get this pen for yourself. Okay, so that's all I have for the background information. Moving on to the neutral zone. Those elements about the pen that are either good or bad, or can be good or bad, depending on you. I like to start with the nib. The nib is a stainless steel gold-plated nib, number 6 sized. On the shoulders, you can see the typical Yovo scroll work. Underneath the breather hole, you have 3952, which is actually apparently supposed to be the tallest mountain in Taiwan. Underneath those numbers, you have Laban. Underneath Laban, you have Germany for where the nib was made. Underneath Germany, you have M for the medium-sized nib. Underneath, you have the typical Yovo feed found in a lot of your Yovo nib units. Having said that this is a Yovo nib unit, this nib is unscrewable, just like a lot of Yovo nibs. So this means you can actually fit this nib pretty much into any pen that has a Yovo nib unit. It screws into this ivory marble colored section that has a slight flare right before the nib to help your fingers from sliding off and touching it. The thread section is a metal thread assembly. It houses the push-in style converter that's included. The converter has Laban branded on it right here. These threads of the section screw into the metal thread assembly of the barrel. The outer threads of the barrel are used in capping. After the threads of the barrel, you have 2 rings that separate a little ivory section. I think it makes a nice accent. The rest of the barrel has this broken flaked green acrylic that has a lot of depth. It's really nice and smooth and shiny, very vibrant. I really like the color of it. At the end of that green section is another gold ring, followed by the end finial, which is a dirty water New York City hot dog style, or sausage style, or cigar style, rounded tip. The cap is more of the same ivory acrylic that the ivory acrylic parts of the barrel are. The finial is a very elaborate antiquitous style finial. It has these leaves around the L for Laban, 2 rings, which seems to be a common theme throughout the pen, and also an L bracket style tension fixed clip that's fixed to the underside of the cap. The center band has Laban right there on the front and nothing else around it. The pen as a whole has a very antiquitous look. It's a cigar-style pen, not too shabby. Now, I usually like to go over the packaging of the pen, but actually I received this pen without any packaging, so in that case, I can't go over it, so sorry about that. That's all I have for the neutral zone. Moving on to the good. Those elements about the pen that are good. Hey, so I'm a big fan of JoWo nibs. I know that nowadays it seems as though every brand is starting to use JoWo nib units, from Montegrappa to Leonardo Officina Italiana, which is also a big change for that brand because they used to use Bach nibs all the time. Now we have Laban starting to use them. Now this might get boring after a while, but in the case of the Laban 325, I really do have to say I really do enjoy the writing experience. There is something about the overall weight and density of the pen that for some reason affects the writing experience. This nib is a medium, as I said, in the neutral zone, but there's something very satisfying about it. It has a slight amount of feedback. It's got a decent amount of ink flow. I really enjoy it. I'm writing with it unposted, and I think unposted is the best way to write with it because when you do post the pen, it does ever so slightly backweight the pen a little bit. Now, having said that, posting the pen is just fine. The entire back finial, the white section of the back end of the pen, is totally covered whenever you do post it, and it's comfortable, but it is slightly different. I personally feel like writing with it unposted is the best way. Now, talking about the aesthetics of the pen is really nice. You have to like it though. You have to look at it and say, wow, I like that, because the contrast between the marbleized resin and the cracked green flake acrylic may not be for everybody. That's just a preferential thing. But for what it is, I have to say that the overall aesthetic is actually really, really nice. I love the quality control when it comes to the capping of the pen. The threads are super smooth. I like how everything fits together very nicely. In the hand, the pen feels really sturdy. It feels really well built, and it's got some weight to it despite it being an acrylic pen, and that has a lot to do with the inside of the barrel has a metal sleeve that adds the additional weight. That's all I have for the good. Moving on to the bad. Let's talk coin. So this pen has an MSRP of $140. With retailers here in the US, you can score this pen at a discounted price of about $112, depending on which model and color you get. For example, there are the red ones which cost $112 with retailers here in the US, and then for some reason, this forest green one, which is probably the coolest one out of all of them, costs even less at $96. So I'm not sure why there's more of a price range or price difference with one color over the other, but just know that the average cost is about $96 to $112 with retailers here in the US, and I have to say, it's not too shabby, it's not too bad. Especially considering the quality, the build, the way it writes, the JoWo nib, and its pretty much overall pedigree information. It's a pretty decent pen for the money. That's all I have for the bad. Moving on to the ugly. Those elements about the pen that should not be, but are. So when it comes to the ugly, there really is not much here to say. Now, I can talk about the design element and how antiquitous it looks with the marble white colored cap and then the separation of the green segment in the barrel and whatnot. But that would really be a matter of taste. And when I talk about the ugly stuff, I like to talk about things that should not be. For example, if there was a design element that made or break the pen, or if there was quality control problems that made or break the pen. When it comes to this pen, that doesn't exist. It's really well built and it writes like a savage to boot. So when it comes to the ugly, I don't really have anything. That's all I have for the ugly. It's high noon. Decision-making time. Should you or should you not pull the trigger on the Laban 325 fountain pen? As I said earlier, this pen writes like a savage. It's one of my favorite writers. Sure, it's just another acrylic pen with a JoWo nib, but it does its job, and it does its job very well. It also is a savage when it comes to the build quality. It's built very well and is sturdy and feels solid in the hands. There's nothing about this pen that I can say doesn't warrant the cost of admission, and I really think that if you gave it a shot, you'd be really happy. Unless, of course, it is that when you look at this pen, you immediately say to yourself, I'm not really crazy about the aesthetic, because then in that case, there are other pens that you can get that you would actually like the visuals of even more. But if you're looking at this pen and you like the way it looks, then everything else that comes behind it is actually on point and worth its cost. So pull the trigger on this pen if you like the way it looks. If not, look somewhere else. That was my review of the Laban 325 fountain pen. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks again for watching. Love you guys. Be well, be safe.